Hello, guys, and welcome to Bub's On Air Tech Talk. So jump on the boat and let's take a ride. Today we've got with us, it's just going to be a real laid-back show today. We've got Chuck Haynes and Fred Scholl. Fred's going to be talking a little bit about the event, the Consumer Electronics Week he's going to be going to later on, and he's just got in the LG G3 review unit, so he's going to have a little bit to say about that. Like I said, it's just going to be a real laid-back show today. It's just the three of us, no special guests, so just going to chat about some stuff that happened in technology this week. I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on Uncarrier, and let me open up Q&A here. If anybody has Q&A, has a question about what we think about the Uncarrier 6.0 announcement, I'd really like to get people's opinions on that. Fred, did you see anything about the Uncarrier 6.0 announcement this week?
Just caught it peripherally as I was working on something else. It actually kind of, it's interesting for me because I have been toying with dabbling in, or at least giving a try to T-Mobile's service, and with their 7-day test drive, I now have no excuse not to do it. So
yeah.
I'm already pre-registered for that. I'll be looking forward to the kickoff.
That's great. What about you, Chuck?
Well, yeah. So I guess we'll start off with what was Uncarrier. So was it 6 or 5? Because I saw 5 some places. I saw 6 some places.
I thought it was 6, but I guess I could be wrong. I did see 5 a lot of places, but I thought it was 6.0 today.
Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, I guess the 2 big announcements was the trial. Now it is limited right now to the 5S, and there are a few caveats to the actual trial itself. It is 7 days. You get to test. You don't actually have to live near a T-Mobile store to test it. However, you do have to return your test unit to a T-Mobile store. So even if they do actually ship you the test unit, you still got to go back to the store to actually return it. They put, what is it, a $6.99 hold on your credit card, which makes sense. I mean, they are giving you a $700 phone, so they're not going to give it to you for free. I mean, you know, it makes sense. They're gonna put a hold on your credit card. I'm okay with that. I know a lot of people probably could be a little bit up in arms about that, but you know. I mean, they're not going to give you something for free because, unfortunately, there are people out there that are just going to take it and run with it. So you do get the 5S, the iPhone 5S to test on their system, 7 days. Excuse me, $6.99 hold on your credit card, which, of course, you know, once you return it back to the store, they give it back to you. Now, they do also will charge you for any damages to the phone, which makes sense as well. 7 days, cool, great. I mean, you know, that's kind of neat. But the second part of the announcement was really the part that kind of interested me, only because I can't get T-Mobile here. I'm in the middle of Kansas. You know, it's Verizon or nothing here. AT&T even barely scratches the surface here. But T-Mobile with their Uncarrier events, you know, they've been kind of forcing a little bit of change on the other carriers and things, which I think is great. But so the second part of their announcement was the streaming music doesn't go against your data cap. Please, Verizon, if anyone out there is Verizon is listening to this show, please, please, please implement that. Because, you know, I've got, I think, a 6 gig cap on my monthly phone, and probably 4.5 gigs of that is streaming music. So it would be awesome for other carriers to pick up that streaming music. Now, I do know it was limited. I forget which ones it was actually limited to, and of course they're letting people vote on it. It seems like right now Google Play All Access is top of the list, obviously. So it'd be cool if they would also implement that. So I think those were the 2 big announcements, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm really hoping the second one starts trickling out to the other carriers. I'd really, really like to see that.
Oh, yeah. Well, because in my opinion, I'm actually really surprised, being that so many phones are Android now. I'm really surprised that All Access wasn't included in the initial release. Now I understand Pandora, obviously. Pandora, what was the other one? iHeartRadio, that's a really popular one, and then
Rhapsody too, wasn't it?
Yes, Rhapsody. So those are probably the actual leaders in downloads. But like Milk, how did you include Milk and you didn't include All Access? Like that doesn't make sense.
I bet Samsung threw a little bit of money out there for that one.
Well, even so, though, to me that's just weird. You know, you can't like it's an Android thing. Well, okay, it's not an Android thing. That's my Android purism coming through. But I feel like it's an Android thing. It should be an Android thing. They should just exclude iPhone now. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, that's what I do have T-Mobile, so I'm very very excited, and I do have all access. So obviously, last night I scoured online until I found the voting thing, and then voted, shared it. I want everyone to vote. I even told everybody at TechDissected, hey, if you don't have T-Mobile, even if you don't have T-Mobile, vote on this, please. Vote for that. Vote for Prime Music. That's probably the second leading that list. I think it's All Access and then Prime Music are not neck and neck at all. All Access has got a huge lead, but
I'd like to talk about Prime Access here in a little bit. Have you tried it?
No, I have it. I have it because I have a student membership, and I do have access to it, but I haven't even looked at it. Which, if it's anywhere near as good as All Access, I will probably cancel my All Access because
It's not.
No, okay, I didn't think it would be. It's free, so.
Yeah, well, we talk about it here maybe in a little bit after we get done with Uncarrier, but I've tried it. I thought I was going to cancel All Access, but I've gone back.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's okay. I mean, there's not much that anyone can do to compete with anything Google really sets their minds to right now. So, but that's another story too. Now, in general, for the Uncarrier stuff, what do you guys think about this Uncarrier scheme that John Ledger has? Because to me, do you think it's really just setting up for them possibly being sold to SoftBank and then everybody really getting screwed? Because I would hate that, being a T-Mobile customer, which wouldn't matter to me because I don't have a contract. Nobody has a contract on T-Mobile right now, but unless you haven't lived yours out. But for the most part, nobody has a contract anymore. But what do you guys think about this Uncarrier plan in general? You think it's going to work for T-Mobile? You think they'll end up dominating?
Dominating, no. So unfortunately, here's why T-Mobile has to do this. T-Mobile covers, 10% of people in the U.S., maybe? Mm-hmm. I mean, let's face it, if you're not in a major city on the east or west coast, you don't get T-Mobile. Yeah. The closest place I could even get a T-Mobile signal around here, not LTE, just a signal, hour and a half, 2 hours, before I could even see a T-Mobile signal. So I think what T-Mobile is doing on carrier is awesome because they are forcing change on some of the other carriers, but they have to kind of pull out, I don't want to call them gimmicks. They're not gimmicks. I mean, they're great things for the consumer, but they have to do more than just having a network to make people want to get on T-Mobile. Yeah. So I think that's a big part of their Uncarrier. Believe me, I'm very, very happy that they're doing it because I think that I've seen AT&T and Verizon do some really, really good things as a result of what T-Mobile's doing. But T-Mobile is almost in the place where they have to because they don't have the coverage. To like Verizon or even somewhat AT&T. So they've got to come up with something else to entice people, and that's what Uncarrier is. And it seems to be working for them pretty well so far.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, I mean, like you said, they're really, really, they're really. I feel like they're doing what Apple did with this last event. They laid it all on the table. I think that was you who said that, right? They laid it all on the table and they said, all right, Google, what are you going to do now? We've caught up, so what's next? And that's what I feel. I feel like they're trying to do that, but pushing it forward. So they're saying, hey, we're going to be the best choice, at least for the people who cover us, or who we cover. And honestly, pretty much everybody I know, even if they can't have T-Mobile, wants T-Mobile. It's amazing. I mean, it's incredible how they're probably the most desirable cell carrier right now. But definitely the most desirable, probably the most desired. And I've switched most of my family over to T-Mobile, and I really, really hope that T-Mobile starts erecting towers in other places. I mean, just if you can cover those people, not even 4G, not even LTE, because their 4G is so strong. I switched to a phone without LTE because their HSPA Plus is so strong, and I have LTE in my area. So I am actually going backwards a little bit, but.
Well, yeah, but if you remember, it wasn't too long ago. So when an AT&T H Plus, I used to have AT&T when I lived in Virginia, and it was never LTE. It was only H+. But let me tell you what, I absolutely loved it. And I don't know if anyone remembers, but back when Verizon was just starting to roll out their LTE, their big push was LTE, 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 and AT&T's kind of fight back was, yeah, it's LTE, but as soon as you go to CDMA, you're basically screwed as far as data coverage goes. I mean, your speeds went from let's say 20 meg to down to half a meg if you're lucky. And so the big thing with H+ is H+ really, really degrades nicely. So even if you don't have LTE, even the next step down on H+ is still super fast. So yeah, if T-Mobile could just get coverage, absolutely, 100%, I'd switch to them. I really hope them and the Sprint merger goes through. Because I think that although Sprint CDMA and T-Mobile's GSM, they can figure something out there to greatly expand T-Mobile's coverage.
Well, and I remember with T-Mobile when they were upgrading, because T-Mobile didn't have to erect any new towers for LTE. Everything T-Mobile's done from G to, they probably added new towers for 3G, but everything from 3G up has all been upgrades. They've just upgraded existing towers. And I know, and don't get me wrong, I know they actually have built towers since then, obviously, but they've been able to do it in such a good way. They've been able to do it in an upgrade style that they've been able to provide. Like for me, we've seen pretty much right after it's announced, we've seen 3G pop up, and then 4G, HSPA plus, and then LTE, all in Canton, Ohio. I mean, and we have the Football Hall of Fame. We've got a little bit of draw, and we're really, we're in between Cleveland and Columbus, so there's a lot going on around here. But still, I mean, in my LTE, it's not the fastest. We see some people getting 100 megabits download on the LTE and T-Mobile in different areas, like in like El Paso, Texas, and just the bigger areas on the coasts. And we don't have that here. Like our LTE here is basically 5 megabits faster than the H+, which our top H+ speeds are, in the 40s, like 30, 40s. So to me, there's not enough of a difference. But I am looking forward to what they're doing. And I thought LTE was a great answer for the bandwidth in the air issue we were facing for a while because of iPhones, actually.
Yeah.
But I think that's about enough of the uncarrier. Let's see. Let me make sure nothing popping up about. Let's see, here we go. Got a question. I'm on unlimited data, and I think they throttle at 5 gigabytes. I always get right at 5 gigabytes before they reset. AT&T. So AT&T, this is from Dislex FX. I didn't know AT&T throttled at all. I thought AT&T...
just charge overages.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was one of the things that... I didn't know any other company throttled, actually.
Yeah, I thought that Sprint and T-Mobile were the only ones who throttled, because Sprint on their everything plan will throttle you, won't they?
I've never heard about throttling on Sprint.
Huh, okay, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that Verizon will definitely happily charge you. And I thought AT&T was the same way, but maybe not. I'll have to look into that.
Oh, last uncarrier announcement before we do switch from uncarrier was... they're not throttling Ookla anymore. Did you hear that?
Yep.
So speedtest.net, the app, will no longer be affected by your data cap throttle, which on the one hand is good because it's 20 megabytes every time, 20 or 30 megabytes every time you run the speed test. That's a lot of data for some people, especially people on the 500 megabyte plan. But when you're throttled, there's no way to find out what speed you're getting. I mean, I suppose you could probably visit it from a Chrome browser, maybe, or Tether and try to do it that way. But because it just depends on what data they're looking at to see whether they should throttle you. But I kind of look forward to see what modders are going to do with this now that they know, there's ways to get data not throttled while you're throttled. If they'll make a VPN or something that you can use to get your high-speed data throughout the month, even after you're throttled, that would be interesting.
Yeah, that will be interesting. It all depends, I guess, on how they're doing their throttling, and how they're doing their differentiation of this is a streaming music service versus this is a not. Mm-hmm. I'm actually really, really curious. Not that we'll ever know, but I'm curious how they're doing that. Whether they're doing like some deep packet inspection, or whether they're doing just header sniffing, or what are they actually doing. It'd be really, really curious. Like I said, we'll never find out because, why would they ever tell us? But curious to know how they're doing it.
Well, I do know that when the tethering started to get big, because I had the Samsung Vibrant when it got the 4 point, or no, I'm sorry, 4 point. It got the 2.2 update, and when the Samsung Vibrant got the 2.2 update, it enabled tethering before I'd ever even heard of it. So I was able to tether with my phone wirelessly. I knew what tethering was, but do a wireless access point with my phone before I even knew what that was. And once they started getting the hang of it, or getting the idea that people were going to be using this and abusing this if they have unlimited data plans, what they started doing to police that was selling tethering plans, and then anyone who's not on a tethering plan, they just sniff port 80. And anything that goes through port 80 was rerouted. If you don't have a tethering plan, or if you're over your limit, was rerouted through to their page saying, "Hey, buy a tethering plan." So if you tried to hook up a Chromebook or a laptop or a desktop computer, it would just go to the T-Mobile page. But the cool thing about that is on my unlimited data plan, because I had a rooted phone, I could still tether. Even though it would redirect on port 80, I could tether with my PS3 and watch high-definition Netflix all month. The only thing I was missing was the cover art for the boxes, because it would grab those from port 80, but it would actually stream the video through to the PS3. High-def, great speeds, better than my home internet that I have right now, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get a little bit of a glimpse into what they're doing, into how they're doing this stuff. Because somebody said there's kind of a net neutrality concern now, that if they're going to be looking into what you're doing hard enough to know whether to throttle you or not.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I never thought about that, but that kind of does go along with somewhat net neutrality, because has there been? I guess the big question behind it is, has there been any money that's exchanged hands to suddenly allow this, all these streaming music services to not count against your data cap? Because one of the things I saw someone wrote was that, someone was talking about paying AT&T, I forget who it was, Pandora, whoever it was, to basically do the same thing, but there was money exchanging hands. They were, whatever the streaming service was paying AT&T to not have that count against your data caps, which is exactly the point of net neutrality. Is you shouldn't be able to pay to make your service better than someone else's.
Yes, that's a very good point.
Do we know if the free, the non-counted, unlimited streaming music is only going to be through those providers' own apps, or if it's going to apply to a web browser also?
I believe it. I can't imagine it would apply to a web browser. Like if I were to tether my laptop and then listen to All Access, and once All Access is included, or Pandora, I sincerely doubt that would be excluded from my data plan. I think if it's going through, because it's just so different. And I don't think you can listen to Pandora through a mobile browser, but I could totally be wrong about that. I just imagine that they wouldn't let you do that if there's an app.
Yeah, it's actually a good question. I guess I never thought about that. And
so
once again,
the mechanism here may really just be mechanism here may just be giving preferential network status to the certain apps that they decide to allow.
It could be.
Yeah, I guess that all goes back to how are they figuring it out. Is it just they're looking at the app that's running? Are they looking at the actual traffic? How are they looking at the traffic? Yeah, because if they're doing something like a deep packet inspection or something like that, I'm not saying they would, but they would be able to differentiate whether it's the app or the browser, going to say All Access. They're hitting the same servers. So are they just looking to see where the destination traffic is? I don't know.
Yeah, that's odd. Let's see. All right, Fred, you want to talk about the toy you got in the mail today?
I will, yes. Here we go. This has just arrived today. I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but this is a
Show us the back. We'll let people be able to tell what it is.
pre-release. Here we go. Yeah, this is a pre-release model of LG G3, which I have. I'm not seeing for the first time. I did see it at the rollout event in New York City back at the end of May. And I was lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones who has gotten one of these pre-release models. This one is actually from South Korea, I am told, and it does have some apps delivering Korean writing. Again, I don't think this is going to show up on screen, so there are some items here that I'm not entirely sure what's on here. And it was set up for an Asian network, and I do not have a SIM card for the U.S. yet, so I've literally just booted this up about an hour ago, and I've got it on my Wi-Fi here. Immediate impressions are furthering what I saw at the event, the rollout event. It's a real nice case. It's a large phone, but it's got a nice rounded back, very nice edge on it. It's a reasonably thin phone, not as thin as what we were looking at last week. The screen, immediate impressions are what stands out the most is the screen. It's an incredibly high resolution display. The screen, and again, I don't think this really is going to show on camera here. There's very little wasted screen real estate here. It's a very thin border around the edge at which there's no display. One
It's
thing
a
that's
5.5 inch
interesting to
screen,
note on
right?
this one, I'm sorry?
It's a 5.5 inch screen, right?
It is 5.5 inches, yes. One thing that's interesting in the general design and case is that there are no side buttons, no top buttons. There is one button on the back, which is primarily screen on and off, and this appears to be a rocker type button. It seems to control volume, and I'll have to play around with it a little bit more and see what else can be done with this one. We do have a notification light on the back of the phone, and again, interestingly, the sides, top and bottom, are surprisingly bare. There's a charger port here, there's an audio port, and that is about it, it looks like.
Cool.
So can you actually tell the difference?
I will be playing around with this a little bit more. I'm sorry?
You had said the screen was resolution. Can you actually tell the difference between, say, a standard flagship and that screen? Can you actually see the pixel difference?
I am able to see the initial opening lock screen has some graphics. It's kind of a smoky, multicolored image, which is just absolutely stunning. And honestly, compared to other stuff that I've been looking at, a Nexus 5 that I've got kicking around here, it's outstandingly sharper. Colors are amazingly bright. The camera, by the way, is phenomenal. We played around with it a little. We just snapped some pictures of kind of still life stuff of tabletop and so on. It's a 13 megapixel camera. And I think the main feature of the camera, and there are a number of exciting features of the camera, but the main feature here seems to be that it uses laser autofocus. And as far as I know, it is the first mobile device that uses laser autofocus. I think that's, up until now, has been reserved for high-end DSLR cameras and such. And it will focus and snap a picture in one shot. What you get when you hold the camera up is that it identifies kind of focal points, and all you need to really do Again, this is not going to do anybody justice trying to show it on the screen here, but all you need to do is basically point at one of the focal points, and in one shot it focuses around that point and snaps a picture. And it's between the quality of the camera and the quality of the display, it produces a very impressive result.
That's awesome.
What I have not gotten, and I'm looking forward to getting around to playing around with. Oh, sorry. What I'm looking forward to playing around with a little bit more is the audio. It's apparently got a built-in 1 amp speaker, which should be, 1 watt speaker with some sort of amplified boosted sound, which should be real interesting to play around with, and I'll have more on that next time. And we'll look for a more in-depth review coming up as well.
Awesome. Well, a couple people have asked questions about where Cliff is. I'll just let you guys know. Cliff wanted to be here with us tonight, but he had something he has to do really early in the morning, and just be here on the East Coast for, actually, I think all of us. Are you in Central, or are you in East Coast too, Chuck?
I'm in Central.
Central, okay, yeah. We're the majority of the people on the show are East Coast, so we run this show right until midnight, so he wasn't able to be with us. Hopefully he'll be back with us next week. And Alvi, my co-host, my host, however you would want to say it, is actually on a mission trip with his church this week. So he's out of town, and he will be back next week though. So he's just out helping some people out. So we miss you guys when you guys watch this on YouTube. We wish you guys were here, but we were looking forward to next week when we'll have you back.
While we're at it, Tony, you want to take a crack? I see there's a couple QA questions here. I know one of them was about Android 444. Since we're talking about the LG and Android, someone asked, what is 444? Well, from best I can tell, it's just a security update. It looks like from the change logs it fixes some issues with OpenSSL. You know, a few weeks, what was it, about a month or so back with Heartbleed and all the issues with SSL, I think that issues with SSL are really starting to come to light. There's been a lot of companies that are starting to... OpenSSL is actually kind of interesting because it's an open source project that essentially has zero money, but is used by everyone. It's used by everyone to secure the web. You know, HTTPS, that's OpenSSL. It's kind of an interesting project. Well, now companies are kind of realizing that, hey, we're kind of depending upon the security of a open source piece of software that has zero funding whatsoever. So there's been a lot of companies that have been kind of putting some money out there for OpenSSL and fixing bugs and kind of looking for bugs. So I think over the next probably 2 or 3 months, you're going to see a lot of OpenSSL bugs, quote unquote, and the fixes. 4.4 is just one of those. It looks like it's mostly OpenSSL, and there also looks like there's some changes to the CTS suite. But the CTS suite has nothing to do with our phones. It's just how manufacturers get their phones approved for Android. So looks like a relatively minor update, most of which just making your phones more secure.
Interesting. Okay, let's see. Let me look through. All right, DysLexFX says you don't think it would be scary to have them watch what we're streaming. I don't think... In just my opinion, I don't think that anyone has the patience to watch the kind of stuff that I stream online except for me, because you have to. And hey, it's nothing bad. It's not. But if you want to look over my show, and now I'm not one of those people. Well, I don't have anything to hide. No, I do like my privacy too. But if you have the patience to watch the kind of ridiculously techie nonsense to most people crap that I look at online, and just like hours of watching like Bear Grylls eating a giant tree weta, and giant tree weta is trying to rip people's fingers off. Like, if you want to watch that with me, more power to you. But I honestly don't think that anybody's sitting in a room at T-Mobile like. And honestly, if anybody was, sitting in a room at T-Mobile watching what we're watching, it'd probably be Ledger, just because he's the kind of guy.
Hey, no, let me tell you right now, the NSA is watching everything you're watching anyway, so what's it matter?
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think about that, Chuck?
Which part's that?
Oh, he dislikes FX. He said y'all don't think it's scary to have them really watch what we're streaming. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, okay. Here's the thing. If anyone thinks that anything they use in this day and age, the people of that product aren't watching what you're doing, I think it's kind of naive. Let's think about it. Why is Gmail free? Because Google looks at every email that you send, picks out what they want, and advertises it to you.
Yeah.
Why is just about every Google product free? Because Google makes billions off advertising to you based on your information. Why did Amazon make the Amazon tablet or the Amazon phone? So that they can sell more things to you based off your usage. This is just another case of, okay, so someone's watching what I'm doing. Do I agree with it? No, I actually hate the fact that people are constantly watching what I'm doing. But in this day and age, you're going to pay for something somehow, whether you pay for it with money or whether you pay for it with data about you. You're going to pay for everything you use in some way, one way or the other.
What's that popular saying? It was something like, if you're not the buyer, you're the product being sold.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's something about that.
Yeah. So what do you think about that, Fred? Do you have any opinions on that? On whether T-Mobile is actually watching, and if that scares you? You might be having some sound issues, or maybe some lag.
The idea of Big Brother watching me, I'm a little bit of a child of the 60s, so the idea of Big Brother watching me is something that has loomed over me for a long time already. And I'm a bit of a privacy nut in that area. Again, not that it's a question of what I have to hide, but just on a general principle of things. It's an interesting question. Someone actually sitting there watching over what we're doing seems highly unlikely, but it's not that hard for them to log our activity in the way that we found out that the carriers have been logging phone calls, text messages, and so on. And once you've got that stuff in a searchable database, who knows what happens next after that.
Let's see. All right, done with that one. What do we have on the docket now? Interesting. Oh, Tesla. Yeah, let's talk about Tesla open sourcing their patents. That's something I want to touch on. What do you guys think about this? I mean, Tesla, their model was start with a really high-end car and then make money, and then so they can now start producing lower-end, not lower-end, but just cheaper, more affordable cars. And obviously, they've only gotten down to, what, $90,000 is their cheapest car right now, $89,000 at baseline. So what do you guys think about them already open sourcing? Do you think that this could be the end of Tesla Motors? If they're throwing the patents out to the masses, I think it might sound like they're getting ready to be sold.
I'll let you take this first, Chuck.
No, I'm actually trying to figure out what I'm going to say.
I did do a post about this on TechDissected, and I don't see it as the death throes of Tesla. Honestly, I think if they were looking to put themselves up on the auction block, they would try to hold on to the patents to retain more of a positive balance sheet in that regard. Looks to me that it's I'm taking Elon Musk at his word as this being a commitment to both the concept of open source and to the idea of the mission of what Tesla Motors set out to do, which was to essentially to make electric vehicles more of a reality, make electric vehicles more accessible. The approach and the way that he presented it in the press release, which for those who haven't seen it, was quite aptly named "All Our Patent Are Belong to You," and the approach really was that he no longer sees the patents as having the value that he originally did. I think the original plan for the patents was something of a defensive one, to give them their claim and their stake when the big auto manufacturers started taking those ideas and running with them, which is something that has not really happened yet. And as far as other specifically electric car manufacturers, there's not a lot going on out there. So the approach is really that they're not looking at other electric car manufacturers as their competition, either financially or in terms of intellectual property, if we want to use that cliche. They're looking at their competition as being the vast majority of car sales that are still gasoline-powered car sales. They see a reality, which is that they can't produce themselves enough cars, enough electric cars to compete with the gasoline car industry. So by releasing the patents, it doesn't really affect what they're doing. The approach to releasing patents has been, we're not going to sue anyone who in good faith takes our ideas and tries to use them. And I take him at his word. I think it's a noble gesture to make it easier for more companies to start producing electric vehicles. It, in some ways, actually a little bit raises the bar, because now the big car manufacturers no longer really have an excuse.
Well, I mean, ultimately, also for the consumer, this is a good thing. I mean, you know, we all know the patent system here in the U.S. is utterly broken, especially when it comes to software patents. I mean, look, Samsung and Apple have been battling in court for how long now? And let's face it, what honestly for the consumer has come out of that that's good? Nothing, other than I hear old ladies, you know, at the coffee shop going, "Hey, this is my Samsung phone." They call it like the cheap Apple phone. You know, I mean, other than Samsung basically winning out, you know, with this lawsuit, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because Apple was trying to get rid of them, but I think Samsung's come out on top. I mean, what are the patents and other that really done for the consumer? Nothing. I mean, I understand patents are supposed to, you know, protect businesses, but really, competition is good. Open source your patents. You know, make someone make you make a better product. You know, that's kind of what I see happening here. What I'm hoping would happen here is that let's give this out to someone and force us to make a better product. And ultimately, in the end, consumer wins, or at least that's what I would hope.
Interesting.
Well, I think that's the general idea. One of the things that I find interesting is that Elon Musk, once again, CEO of Tesla Motors, it really seems to be taking the approach that he sees patents at this point as inhibiting progress. He actually, at one point in the press release, referred to them as intellectual property landmines. And you know, that sounds like the kind of thing that we would kick around here. And I genuinely really appreciate him putting that out there in a public press release, and then opening up the patents to really kind of put his money where his mouth is. And if I might add, I think it's in the spirit of Tesla, the inventor, from whom the company takes its name, unabashedly, without his permission or without any royalties being paid there, for that matter. But among the many eccentricities that Tesla was known for, he may not be known for many of his vast wealth of inventions, simply because he didn't really enforce his patents and intellectual property rights, if you would have called it that at that point in time, as exemplified by something like radio, which He himself commented that although Marconi gets credit for the radio, it was Tesla who had created apparently as many as 17 patents that Marconi utilized, and his comment was something to the effect that Marconi seemed like a nice guy and the radio seemed like a good invention, so let him go ahead and use them.
Wow. Well,
So I think they would have done him proud.
Yeah, let's hope that is where they're going with it, and I really hope they do, because honestly, I'd like them to live to see me make a salary where I can get a Tesla car. Because honestly, I'm sorry, Dyslexx FX, I have to disagree with what you said. People do care about electronic cars. I don't know. Do you have to fill your gas tank? Anybody who has to fill their gas tank once a week, or every other week, they should care about electric cars, even if they don't give a crap about the environment. You should care about an electric car. I was talking to actually Alvi, who our co-host here on other weeks. He has a Leaf, and he said he doesn't really notice a difference in his electric bill, and he uses an electric car, and he can get 250 miles on a tank, or on a charge on a tank. But to me, that's incredible. And if I could afford one right now, I'd have one right now. I mean, it's not. Yeah, I like the idea of saving a little bit of the environment and a little bit lower maintenance vehicle, but to me, like that, not paying gas. I mean, I drive a Cavalier, and it still costs like almost $50 to fill up the tank. But that's just my little side note on that. I do care about electric cars, and I can't wait to be able to afford one. Let's see. Anybody tried Z Launcher yet? Anybody downloaded that by Nokia?
I did, actually. And Nokia, I'm just going to say, what in the world were you thinking? I do root my phone, and the first thing I'm presented with is, sorry, we don't support rooted phones.
Side note, so was I, and my phone's not rooted. So, not really sure what happened there, guys. I already submitted a little complaint, but from what I'm hearing, it's not really going to be worth it to wait. So,
it's not. So, okay. I'll give you a little story. I am rooted. That was the first thing I was presented with is, sorry, we don't support rooted phones, which is funny because you're a launcher. So what do you care whether I'm rooted or not? But being the good root user that I am, I fired up Exposed and went and downloaded Root Cloaker. So downloaded Root Cloaker, said, let's see, let's just hide the root from Z Launcher. Rebooted my phone, and sure enough, look at that, Z Launcher popped right up. I was no longer rooted magically, according to it. So yeah, Nokia, good luck, with that one. But it was laggy. It lagged, and I'm on an HTC M8. Nothing should lag on that phone ever. It's like any flagship phone these days, the Snapdragon 800. There is absolutely no reason anything should ever lag on that phone. If it does, then you need to fire your programmers and hire new ones. But it's, I've tried a bunch of times using these launchers where it kind of tries to predict what you're doing, and it never does a good job. And now, granted, I only gave it about 2 hours, so maybe I need to give it a little bit longer. But in addition to predicting apps, it predicts contacts. So the fact that I text messaged my wife earlier in the day and I called work, to talk on a conference call, it showed those contacts in addition to the apps. So I was like, what's the point of that? I mean, just because I text messaged my wife twice during the day doesn't mean that that needs to be the first thing on my phone for me to access. Plus, it only showed one calendar item. Me personally, I'm a scheduling fiend, so I have a widget that just shows my entire day and the entire scheduling thing. And if I don't have that, I'm lost. So it definitely doesn't work for me.
Well, have you seen it, Fred? Have you tried it yet?
I have not. Only you guys screen captures in the Hangout earlier.
It just looks like every other home screen replacement that I've seen. It looks like anything that has the Today style home screen, which makes sense because the Today home screen was a Microsoft thing, and Nokia has some influence by Microsoft now. So, Yeah, that's it was interesting to me. I'm always up for trying another launcher. I was stuck on gel for a long time when I had the Nexus 5, but now that I've gone over to Blue, I'm using ADWEX again, which is still my favorite. I used what was that one, the location-based launcher, not Next launcher,
Um,
Aviate, right
yeah.
around the time of last barbecue. I was using Aviate a little bit, and you know what? If you do anything within like 4 blocks of your home, which you probably don't there in Kansas, but if you do anything within 4 blocks of your home, you it's gonna think you're there. It's gonna like there's a bar like 4 blocks from my house, a little tavern just in this neighborhood called Mike's Again, and it would always think that I'm at Mike's Again. It's like I'm at home. You know where my home is. You're connected to Google, but I've never been to this place, and it's like popped up. Oh, Mike's Again, and it popped up like menu, and it's really cool that it does that. But you know what that would drive me nuts if I lived in somewhere like San Francisco or New York City because it would never give you appropriate information.
Yeah, well, good news is out here in Kansas, if I was 4 blocks away, I'd be in the middle of a wheat field, so it knew I wouldn't be there. So
Yeah.
know.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm a Nova launcher guy. I tell you, a launcher I am excited about, and we had this on the list too, was Terrain from Samsung. Apparently, launchers are like all the rage these days. Nokia, Samsung, I guess everyone's doing a launcher these days. Terrain is not ready yet for primetime use, but it's a pretty cool idea. It kind of takes Samsung's what was it, magazine UI? Is that what they called their UI on the Tab Pro? It kind of takes that and turns it into a launcher for the phone. If you swipe left, you have a whole bunch of cards that you can look through. Recent contacts, news, calendar. Oh my God, there's a ton of them. It kind of reminds me of what Blink Feed should be, but isn't quite yet. It's a much nicer layout, much more customizable, much more information. Swipe to the right with something. It's got a lot of really cool ideas. It kind of reminds me of the Gel launcher, the fact that swipe left you get Google Now. This, of course, was swipe left and get the Samsung version of Google Now, basically. I guess unfortunately, like the Z launcher, laggy. Took forever to do things. I don't know. Maybe they used TouchWiz Core on it somewhere, and that's why it's so laggy or something. Who knows? But I'll be curious to see where they go with it. What are they doing with it? Because why would Samsung just release a launcher to the store?
And one question is how much now if it's in the store, that'll be interesting, and that'll be something. If they would release a launcher that could be downloaded by any phone, like unlike Gel where you actually have to have a certain phone to use Gel, if it could be used by any phone, that might be a step forward. But my question is, for all these different launcher UI changes we're seeing for Samsung, or the proposed options like the magazine UI that we were seeing that people thought was actually going to overtake their home screen launcher instead of, I know when that first popped up in some video, people thought that was going to be their whole new launcher. But how much further can they get away from the way Android looks and still be popular? To me, I mean, I don't want it to not look like Android at all. That's why I use ADWEX. I like it. I like to theme my icons and stuff. I like my background to be different, but I don't want it to be cards all the time. That's what Google Now is for. That's what tools are for. That's what the apps I use to enhance my experience are for. But my home screen should look like a home screen to me.
Well, I could go with a little bit of conspiracy theory and say that the Android Silver rumors are true, and Samsung knows it. And this is a way to get in the Silver program, but still be able to somehow apply their custom ideas to your phone.
That's interesting. Let's see. Fred, do you have anything to say about your CE week coming up?
I'm sorry, the sound was cutting out for a second there.
Oh.
You were mentioning CE Week?
Yeah, do you have anything to brag on about getting to go to the CE Week in New York?
Yeah, yes, indeed, I do. It's a little bit premature, but a week from yesterday, June 25th, I'll be attending CE Week in New York City. It's a big CE Consumer Electronics event. It goes on primarily 2 days, the 25th and 26th of June. Although there are other conferences earlier, and I think actually some maybe even later in the week as well. I'll be there for the big opening day of the exhibitions. Thanks to Cliff, I've got an invitation to an early morning press-only event. At this point, I'm kind of filling up my dance card for the day with times for conferences and presentations and some folks that I am going to meet and hopefully get to interview, as well as some of the vendors. And apparently there are going to be 150 vendors there of a variety of electronics and technology items. Hopefully there are some who are going to have some samples that we'll be able to bring back to TED headquarters and kick around and play with, and we'll be doing some reviews on. Some of the more interesting stuff that I'm expecting to see there is, let's see what we've got on board here. It looks like among other things, what's really going to be big this year, as is the case everywhere, is wearable technology. So we're certainly expecting a lot of sports fitness related stuff. There is going to be an event there called the Battle of the Bands, but it's not musical bands, it's fitness bands. So a number of vendors are going to be presenting their stuff, I guess, as in a slug out kind of format for the audience to vote on them. There is also that event, the Battle of the Bands, and the next one, which is essentially a fashion wear runway. And this is going to be a variety of wearable technologies that's going to be presented in some sort of a fashion show approach. And in addition to fitness accessories, there are going to be some dresses with programmable lighting, sensor-filled smart shirts, and other things as well. As far as what the vendors are there, that are going to be there presenting. A lot of that still remains to be seen. I've been in contact with them, and a lot of them are telling me that they'll be announcing the products that they're going to be presenting in the early part of next week. But let's see, I've got a meeting and an interview there with the VP of Marketing at Westinghouse, Ray Roque, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. They're going to be there presenting some very high-end, high-resolution desktop monitors, large screen displays, interactive whiteboards. One thing that I find interesting, because I'm sorry?
I said I'll take 2 displays. Just have them ship it to me. I'll review it.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it was
generous review.
Absolutely. Well, get in line for those, I guess. Being a music nut and a musician and a bit of an audio buff, some of the things that I'm going to be very interested to see are an item. There's a company called Zivix who's got an item there called a jam stick, and it's not entirely clear what it is, but it kind of looks like a stringed instrument, but it's got MIDI capabilities and a light sensing fretboard. It's still in development, but apparently they're going to have a prototype there to see and play with. A variety of audio products there as well. There is a company called Damson, who is going to be there, and I'll be meeting James Talbot, who has started this, and again, it's still early production, but they're putting out a product called Headbones, which is what they're calling bone-conducting headphones. Apparently, it doesn't appear that it's got its own amplification system, but it's designed to conduct audio waves into the skull, through the bones of the skull, and deliver crystal clear audio to the inner ear. And doing so, giving a supposedly an extremely clean, direct sound, but without blocking out any sound around the user. So these are all some pretty interesting things. And by this time next week, I will have been there, and I'll probably be overloaded with stories and news and goodies to talk about.
Awesome. I wonder if those headphones. I wonder if you were to open somebody's skull up, Hannibal style. If you could turn their head into a speaker, how loud it would get. I hope they demonstrate. I'm sure Legary would get somebody from Verizon up there to demonstrate that. Anyway, let's see. It's getting kind of late, so is there anything else you guys want to touch on before we do tell everybody good night?
Yeah, I guess we've only got about 5 minutes, but Fred, you want to talk about the Turing test?
Sure. It's a subject that Chuck had brought up in a chat, and I did end up posting a piece on this. I'll just kick it off. The general thing was that a little over a week ago, I guess maybe approaching 2 weeks ago, news came out from England that the Turing test, which is a venerable benchmark, if you will, of computer science and artificial intelligence, had finally been passed. The original story was that it was by a supercomputer from a team in the Ukraine, Odessa, in the Ukraine. And as you began to delve more deeply into the story, it became a little bit more questionable. First of all, it was not a supercomputer, nor even a computer at all. It was a program. It was a chatbot, not a new idea. This has been done for ages, and it reached an arguable benchmark of having fooled 30% of judges into believing that it was a human at the other end of the chat. And there are some interesting twists on this. To start with, the character of the chatbot was a 13 or a 14-year-old boy, I think, from Odessa in the Ukraine, chatting in English. And that's a couple of convenient loopholes to allow the developers of this thing to excuse away grammatical inaccuracies because the kid was talking in his second language, and as well as discrepancies, disparities in information, and so on, because it was only a kid. So it's a little bit of gray area and fuzzy logic there to start with. Chuck, some impressions that you had?
Yeah, so to take a little step back, as far as the Turing test goes, for anyone who hadn't read Fred's piece, which, by the way, I highly recommend, it's an awesome piece, the Turing test basically, it's just to determine the humanness of what's on the other end. It doesn't specify whether it's a chatbot or supercomputer. Just can you fool me into thinking that you're actually a human? Now, so don't go running away and thinking, oh, this is AI and we've got Skynet coming. It doesn't mean that at all. All this means is that, like Fred said, 10 out of 30 judges thought it was a computer, or thought that it was a human on the other end. Let's face it, 30%, really not that much. Also, they kind of gamed the system a little bit. I don't want to take away from what they did. Okay, what they did, great accomplishment, awesome. I know that they've been trying to do this. I think they've been in this competition for 10 years, did they say? They've been in it for this competition for quite some time, and development on this machine's been going on for quite some time. So I don't want to take anything away from what they've done. I think what they've done is awesome. It's great. It's definitely a step forward. But they also did game the system a little bit. Like you said, it's a 13-year-old boy. English was his second language. He's from Ukraine, so if you read some of the chat transcripts of previous competitions, I don't think the chat transcripts for this competition have been released yet, but for previous competitions, you can kind of tell that, yeah, okay, it might be a 13-year-old boy or it might be a computer. There definitely was a lot played with the scenario behind what this person was that played into the did you really pass the Turing test? Also, Fred, you can speak a little bit more towards this, but it's only a 5-minute questionnaire, which can you really figure anything out in 5 minutes? And also, the person who runs it has had some questions behind, is his test really even valid? Is his competition really even valid? Those kind of things. There are other competitions that are longer and are more academically rigorous, I guess is the right word to say, that if this would have passed one of those, it might have been a little bit bigger achievement. Fred, you can speak a little. You talked about it in your article about the kind of the behind this particular competition.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time panning the host of the competition, other than to simply say that despite a reasonably impressive resume in computer science, psychology, studies of the human nervous system, and so on, he's been known for a fair amount of theatrics and dramatics, and I think that making the announcement in terms of being a supercomputer which had passed the Turing test is a little bit of a red flag there, when actually what it was a chatbot and not any kind of an actual machine at all. But still, it certainly is an accomplishment. Certainly, it does give us thought as to what we can expect as we move more and more into a time where we do have to entertain the possibility that we may not be able to tell whether we're talking to a human or a computer. And I think this is really the question that Alan Turing was trying to get at. He didn't exactly create what's now known as the Turing test. For those who may not know, I'm referring to Alan Turing, kind of a legendary mathematician and considered to be a pioneer in computer science and perhaps artificial intelligence. His real question was whether computers or whether machines can think. And being that it's difficult to really define what thinking is, he came up with an approach which was based on something which was essentially a parlor game, a party game, where a man and woman would go into separate rooms. People, fellow party goers, would have to try to, without seeing the person who they were talking to, ask questions of them, which they could only do in writing, submit through a closed door. The responders, the man and the woman, would each try to answer the questions in such a way as to fool the contestants, the players, if you will. They used typewritten answers to avoid any giveaway, telltale gender handwriting signs. And what Turing did was try to apply that to a computer. His original vision was one where someone would ask similar questions to both a computer and to a human and try to determine which is which. I think he was originally also targeting a little higher percentage of the judges or the players who you'd have to fool to really say that the computer had succeeded in masquerading as a human. I'm not sure when exactly the 30% figure was arrived at, but still not the overwhelmingly monumental historic event that it was portrayed as, but still interesting to see where they're going. I was trying to see, by the way, if there's a way to share links in the QA, and it doesn't look like we who are on the on-air hangout can enter there. I wanted to share the links to the articles, but also in our post on the Turing test, there is a link to the actual Eugene chatbot, which is available online. People can play around with it. I've spent a little bit of time with it. Sometimes it's right on. It answers very quickly, and sometimes you kind of feel like you're being gamed a little bit by it. But if we can find a way to share that, or if not, maybe in the
I'll put it on the event page.
afterwards, I can post the links. Yeah, I'd love to hear what other people think about it as they play around with it a little bit.
Now that's not the same chatbot that won the competition, though, right? That's a lesser version of it.
I'm not entirely clear on that. I believe it may be accessing the same database.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for today, guys. Thank you all so much for joining us for Bob's On Air Tech Talk. Fred, thank you for being here again. Thanks for showing us your new toy. Chuck, as always, a pleasure. I just want to wish you guys all a great week, and we will be back again on next Thursday, 11:08 Eastern Time, 8:08 Pacific Time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, everyone.